Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening's ReGen Ag Chat. We are joined by Greg Judy. We're very excited. My name's Genever, and we've also got Nick on the call, and we'll do a bit of an introduction to ourselves in a moment. And then we've got about an hour with Greg. We've got a few questions coming in, but as ever, if you've got any questions for Greg, please write them in the Q&A or chat function at the bottom of your screen, and we will deal with them as we go through. So Greg is joining us at Carbon Calling, which is our conference, which was due to be happening in 2020. It's now happening on the 25th of June up in near Penrith. If you go to carboncalling.farm, there's a few more details on there, and also how you can book in and have a look at the programme. So Greg at that he's got a slot on the main conference. We're working him hard. He's got a slot on the main conference. He's doing a farm walk in the evening, and he's doing a workshop the next day. So he is very amenable to all of our insistence in terms of what he's going to be doing while he's up in Cumbria in June. So Nick, what have you been up to?
Well, we have just nearly finished lambing. We've probably got just a handful left, and we are in the middle of calving. We've got about 65 to do, and we're halfway through, and we've just had a second flock of pasture layers arrive in the new eggmobile, and they amazingly were let out last night, and they all went to bed apart from 5, and we were scratching around trying to catch these 5 hens. But no, everything's good really. I'm a bit tired after lambing, but no, all's good. And Liz, you and I have both taken up a new hobby, which is weight training, which we won't talk about now, but we're both enjoying it. You're lifting slightly more than me.
But there is a reason why I've got heat packs and cold packs near me tonight, because I've done something funny to my back and it's not doing me any favours. But yes, I'm aiming for Britain's Strongest Woman sometime soon.
Oh, flipping out. Well, no, I just can't quite believe we've got Greg kind of in the building. I've listened to him a lot today, and on YouTube and on podcasts, but tonight's going to be a real treat. So fire your questions in, and we don't want to give away everything Greg's going to be talking about at Carbon Calling, but this will give you a flavour of what we're going to be chatting about there. And we just had a quick chat with him now, and it's really good stuff, really good. So can I, so Greg, I'm just going to let you introduce yourself because you'll do a much better job than me. Go for it.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. I'm Greg Judy, and my wife Jan and I, we ranch here in central Missouri, which is basically the center of the United States. We're in rolling hills. It's not a row crop type country. It's very good. It's good for grazing land. And Jan and I started this journey back in 1999 and did everything conventional. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, being unconventional. So we've basically turned our farm around from losing money to being able to make a full-time living off the farm and the land while regenerating the soil and the animals and the community at the same time.
So when you say you started off conventionally, how conventional were you?
Well, Nick, we did everything that the experts told us to do. So we bought the land, we bought the machinery, we focused on high weaning weights, getting big animals, feeding them grain, putting in all these specialty crops, and you name it, we did everything wrong. Well, then I read an article, and this article turned our whole life around, and it said your sole purpose in life should not be to own the land, but to control it. And so that's when we really started looking around the neighborhood for leasing. And then several years later, I met a fellow from South Africa. His name was called Ian Mitchell Innes. And Ian was a high density holistic type grazer in South Africa. And he was talking about, we're not grass farmers, Greg. And that really blew me away because I kind of considered myself being a grass farmer. He goes, no. He said, you're not a grass farmer. He said, you're a microbe farmer. And so that really took it a level lower. I started focusing more on soil health. And he's right. if we take care of the soil, it all starts in the soil, Nick. And I wasn't doing that in my early days. I mean, we were spraying. I'd wake up in the morning and the first thing I asked myself, what can I kill today? That was what I focused on. And it's just the opposite. If we learn to mimic our farm and nature and in harmony with nature, instead of fighting it all the time, we can make a really good living. Our animals have a good living. And at the end of the day, there's something there to hand down to the next generation.
So who were your, in those early days, who were your mentors? Who did, because we go to you and Joel and Gabe. Who did you go to?
The early days, my very first school that really turned it around was, of course, it was a Jim Garish. He was still here at the University of Missouri, and they had a research farm up here in North Missouri. That's the first place that I heard about rotational grazing. Because I'll be honest with you, Nick and Liz, I was completely a greenhorn. I didn't know, and I grew up on a farm, but I never valued the value of grass and healthy soil. I just thought grass is grass. No, it's the most valuable, profitable crop we have on the face of the earth. And I want to talk more about that today, but that was my early educators. But even before them, I was going and listening to a lot of the universities, and they were teaching bigger weaning weights, more milk. And I'm like, and that sounded good to me, but it's not profit per head, folks. It's profit per acre. It's profit per acre. That's what you got to stay focused on.
And do you think with the leasing, because over here, especially, I know that people own land and have mortgages, or people rent land, when they have a rent or they have to hit a certain amount of money every month, or however it comes out of there. Do you think that's part of the focusing on the mind, or is it that you're just not spending money buying the land and you can control it in different ways?
Yes. So to give you an example, we own today, we were almost bankrupt. In 1999, we were trying to own the land and do it all from the bank. Well, today we control 17 farms. 3 of those farms we now own. The cattle have bought in those farms over time. But if we'd have went in and tried to borrow enough money to buy the land, 17 farms, my goodness, it'd have been millions and millions of dollars. What leasing land allows you to do, it allows you to get your numbers up quickly, and it preserves your equity to buy livestock. You got to get in the livestock business, because the livestock business is the solar collector business. They're the ones harvesting the solar energy. And if you spend all your money on land at the very forefront, you don't have any money left to buy the animals.
Yeah. And you mean you're particularly not that interested in the machinery either? It's back to the same point. It's in that whatever machinery is, or money spent on machinery, is not money that's spent on stock.
That's right. The tractors don't have baby calves. Sometimes when you get on the tractor, it sounds like they're going to have a baby. I had an old man tell me, see, if you get on one of them and you're going to listen to the fiddler, if you're going to listen to the music, you got to pay the fiddler. And what he's meant by that is sooner or later, that tractor is going to break down. And when it does, it's going to cost you serious money. A cow, at the end of the day, you can eat a cow. You can feed your family with that. It reproduces itself. It raises one on the ground while it's got another one inside its belly. And it's all doing it with green solar blades of grass. So stay focused on anything that harvests green grass. That's where you put your money. You will always come out if you do that.
So just talk us through your kind of farming system at the moment. So you've got one big mob, or how does it work?
Yeah. So what we try and do, Nick, is over the course of the year, we're trying to maintain as many months of the year, every day that we possibly can. We want one big herd. Now, the reason we focus on that, there's several reasons. One big herd gives you a bigger horsepower engine. And a bigger horsepower engine on the landscape means you have more manure, more urine, more animal impact. You can trample more carbon on the land and less labor because you've only got one herd to move, one water point to put out, one mineral feeder to check, one wire to move. This mob of animals, when you put them together in a large mob, there's less selection. They graze differently. The animals all of a sudden become very competitive. But there might have been an ironweed over that they wouldn't touch earlier. You put them together in a tighter area, they eat it. Because if they eat it, because if I don't eat it, Nick, you're going to. It's that kind of competition. And so we do that throughout the year. We even winter the cows and the bulls together. So to give you an idea, July 1st, all the bulls go back into the mob of cows. They stay with the mob clear up until March 1st. March 1st, those bulls are taken out. And the reason we take them out March 1st is because you count back 4 months. You go, well, March, April, May, June. That's 4 months. You count back to the direction. That's in the wintertime. You don't want to be calving in Missouri in December, January, February, March. It's a wreck. It's cold. There's snow. There's ice. You're going to lose 20% of your calf crop. And so don't calve. Calve when it's warm. When you got green grass and the cows can eat grass to give good milk to your calf. You know, we haven't had a single calf scour. We don't have calf scours anymore. Guess why? We're not calving in the winter in mud. Keep them on green grass. Keep the animals moving. We move our animals twice a day. People say, oh, Greg, that's a lot of work. No, it's not. It's not a lot of work. It's not. There's temporary fencing and geared reels. It's not that much work to do. So that's our practice, is to try and keep them together. Yep.
And are they, how long, are they ever inside?
No, we don't have a barn on our farm. So the animals are never kept inside. The sheep, most people around here will lamb in January, dead of winter, and they've got great big barns. They put the sheep in. The ewes get thin. They have, you know, it's just a wreck. They're giving them all these shots to keep them from getting sick. The best medicine, folks, for livestock, I don't care if you're dealing with sheep, goats, or cows, it's sunlight. Sunlight. Clean sunlight on green grass. It's been happening for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. That's the way animals were designed, outside. If you put them in a barn, they all get hot. They get hot, especially talking cows. When they all get hot and then they walk outside in the cold air, you're going to have pneumonia. You're going to get pneumonia. You're going to have scours in the calves. It's just a wreck. And then you got to haul that manure outside. I'm just not going to do that.
So how do you, where your cows are on, or the mob is on grass all winter, is it? Or what, how do you manage the winter?
Okay, so for winter stockpile, we call that. When our cows go into the wintertime, we're actually from, let's say, August, September into October, we're stockpiling all this grass. So we're letting it grow. See, we get a really nice fall growth spurt in the fall. And so we grow this grass. It's called fescue. Fescue is our main grass over here on our farm. And fescue has the unique ability, it stays green pretty much all winter long. And it maintains really good quantity and quality both. And so it can take a lot of rain. It can take snow. It can take animals walking on it. And so what we're doing is we're moving these cows around our farm through the wintertime with this little piece of wire, just giving them little strips each day, morning and night. And so by constantly moving the animals around, they're not in the same place. They don't tear up your landscape. But let me tell you, Liz, the rest of the story. Our cows weigh 900 to 1,000 pounds. They don't weigh 1,800. So the bigger cows, it's going to be tougher for you to do that. So
I'm going to do this. And so 1,000 pounds in kilos is 450 kilos, basically. So yours are, yep. Well, even if there's sort of 650, which is banded around as the average, so they're still 200 kilos lighter than our average, yep. But actually our average is probably nearer 700 and something. Okay. And
let's talk a little bit about animal weights, your cow weights. So I get this. Everybody says, but Greg, you need a big old cow. You need a big cow. You can't make a living with smaller cows. And my response to that is, I can graze three 1,000-pound cows on the same amount of forage as you can with two 1,500-pound cows. Just go by weight. It's the same amount of forage, but my 1,000-pound cows, I can graze. I can graze them through the winter, and they don't tear up my land. Folks, 80% of the cost of keeping a cow is encountered in the dormant season. In the winter, there's nothing growing. You got to feed them hay. No, you don't. Not if you have the right weight cows. You can continue to move those cows across your farm in the winter without destroying your pastures, but it does take management.
This leads to a question I've got from Patrick from NEP. So that's a rewilding site down in the south of England. So he's keen to know about, do you use hay at all, or it's mainly stockpiled grass? Are you planning to use hay?
We absolutely use hay. We buy our hay. We don't put up any hay on our farm, but we always have some insurance. I call it insurance. You need to have some hay. If you get in an ice storm, we get ice storms here that can be severe. They may last a week, and the ice will be tall enough to hold the cow up. It can be that thick. And during that period, if you don't have some insurance, you're in trouble. It's just like having insurance on your house. You hope you don't need it, but if you have a fire, you're going to wish you had it. And the same way on snow. But hay should not be the all-important thing that keeps your farm going. It's grass. But folks, we've got to learn to grow this grass. And that's what I'm going to cover at Nick's place, is the practices that we use to stockpile forage. It does take different management. And it starts in the spring. I'll just give you that little tip. I'm not going to go into it any further.
The question from Pat continues, sorry, and it's framed in this: asked with the utmost respect, love him, his books and his video. However, can he truly consider his system sustainable and regenerative if it relies on other people's hay?
Yep, I get that all the time, every day. And my response to that is, there's people that bale hay. And our best that we've ever done is 8 days. We went the whole winter and we've only fed 8 days. So I guess I wouldn't be completely 100% regenerative. If it's not a closed system. In other words, I do buy some hay off the farm, and in response to that, I could back off my stocking rate, Liz, to where we probably wouldn't have to feed any hay. But what we get in an ice storm, if we get in an ice storm, I'm going to wish I had some. So yeah, I'm always going to be buying some hay. And my feeling is you can't own the equipment. There's people on the internet. Go to the YouTube. You can find people just crazy about equipment. For good hay and equipment, you're going to have $100,000 to $200,000 invested in that equipment. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to buy hay. And we can buy hay for $25 to $30 a bale. That's for a 1,200 pound net wrap bale. Why in the world would you want to own the equipment to do that? I mean, I grew up making hay. That's what I did. I worked for a hay contractor. I hate it. I hate putting up hay. I'm not going to do it anymore. So yeah.
There's a couple of questions. Well, we'll keep with the stockpiling question, I suppose, as well. So what percentage, so when you start stockpiling in the fall, what area do you start to sort of almost shut up, ready for over the winter?
Yeah, so Liz, I kind of led you astray there. Stockpiling actually begins with your grazing management in the springtime. It doesn't start in the fall. Our practices. Now, what we have done is, by letting our plants get a little bit ahead of themselves, see, a grass plant is a little bit like a rose bush. Every time you clip it, it sends out more appendages, more leaves. And so if you're grazing correctly, starting in the spring, as you graze across your farm with a proper recovery period, your whole farm should be getting thicker and more dense as the summer goes along. So when winter gets there, we don't have one section of our farm that is stockpiled. The whole darn farm is stockpiled, and we graze through the whole farm twice in the wintertime. So, and people say, but Greg, why don't you just take it all? Take all the forage on the first pass. Well, if you do that, you're staying there too long, you're going to tear your farm up. You're going to get a rain, you're going to get a snow, you're going to get an event where the animals tear your farm up. That's the reason that you got to spread them out a little bit and move them in the wintertime, is to keep from tearing your pastures up. So the first pass across in the wintertime, the cattle are getting, you might say, the candy, the best of the stockpile. The second pass around your farm in the wintertime, they're getting what we call the candy wrapper, but you're giving them a bigger area. So they're still getting filled up, and it's better forage than any hay that we can buy. Cows are grazers. That's what they want to do. And if we'll learn to graze the forage, they will graze all winter long. Our cows will go through 20 inches of snow, 20 inches, as long as there's something down there for them to eat. But you can't make cows graze through 20 inches if your grass is that tall. They're not going to do it. There's not enough down there to get.
There's a sort of statement, which, well, a question, I suppose, in terms of, do you ever find any of that? Do you mean if it is a wetter winter? Do you mean, I'm guessing you get colder winters rather than we get wet, drizzly winters sometimes. So we might get some damage and it might rot. So the question is, do you get any of that sort of, I suppose it is over the winter, you'll get some dead, decaying material building up in that.
Yeah, March.
Some of those fields.
We have, yeah, in Missouri, Liz, we have March mud month. And in March, we'll typically we can get 2 weeks of nonstop rain. It just rains every single day. And boy, you talk about challenging. That's the time of the year it's the most challenging for us, because by April 10th, we got the spring green grass coming at us. But to get through March can be a real issue. And so let's back up to winter stockpile. So that's why in March, we always make sure we have some what we call fescue. Fescue grass has a really thick sod. I don't know, do you grow fescue in England?
Yep. It is being grown more often, but it's normally, we tend to see it sort of in older pastures. You don't often put it in new lays.
Yep. Well, a lot of people consider it a nuisance. Matter of fact, they're being taught here in the United States, we need to spray it. You need to spray it with glyphosate and kill it. Now, let me explain that. Kentucky 31 fescue, endophyte infected. There's an endophyte in Kentucky 31, and that endophyte keeps cattle and sheep from overgrazing it. And it's a protection mechanism. Well, if you don't graze the fescue down real short, you don't get all that endophyte into your animals. And the ones that are affected by the endophyte, we sell those. We are not going to go out and spray our farm to kill it. There's more money to be made with fescue than any other grass in Missouri, or the whole Midwest for that matter.
And just so I just Googled it, but it's a tall fescue. So rather than, we'd also sometimes we'd get a meadow fescue, but this Kentucky 31 is a tall fescue type brought in from Europe. It is. Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, I went a bit geeky there for a second, but I just wanted to check.
Greg, can you just tell us a little bit about your cows, the breeding of them, and I think there's a question about the size of your mob. Yeah, just a bit more about the herd.
Okay, so when we started out with Nick, it was 2002 when we bought our first 22 cow-calf pairs. And the breed that we settled on is called South Pole. South is one word, and pole, P-O-L-L. South Pole is a four-way composite breed. It's Red Angus, Hereford, Cinepole, and Barzona. Centipole breed was from the island of St. Croix. It has a lot of heat and humidity resistance. It rains 130 inches in St. Croix. So we needed something that could take humidity and heat. We get hot here in the Midwest. The Barzona is a breed that came from Arizona. Again, desert, takes a lot of heat. And of course, the Red Angus and the Hereford, that's older breeds that have been around a while. But this breed of cattle was developed for fescue. Alabama, southern states. There's a guy down there by the name of Teddy Gentry. He developed this breed like 25, 30 years ago. And the South Pole, it's in our bylaws. We don't feed them grain. You don't feed a South Pole cow grain. It's a great way to ruin them. And it's a great way to what we call bastardize the breed. Matter of fact, it's against the law to put a South Pole in a show ring. You can't show them. It's in our bylaws. You can't show
I like
them.
the idea of the police force coming to attack the person who does. I like you all gang up on them. So it would be.
We don't want show judges telling us what direction these cattle need to go. And that's what happens.
I suppose over here the similar sort of model would be stabilizers, but stabilizers would be bigger cows than the ones you're running.
Yeah,
I would guess.
Well, I'm telling you guys, ladies, I'm saying you guys, Nick and Liz, you just can't overestimate how much it has helped us to get our cow size down. We started out with 1,400 pound South Poles. We're down to 900 to 1,000 pound South Poles. And we're just knocking it out of the park. Absolutely knocking it out of the park. When it rains.
What's 900 pounds in kilos? Is that about 4?
I've got a converter up 1 second. 900 pounds in kilos is 410 kilos.
See, we'd think normal mentality would be tiny, but I'm totally with you. Yeah.
I get that, Nick. I mean, we were in Germany 3 years ago before I did the groundswell tour in England. We went to Germany. I couldn't believe the size of cattle over there. I mean, I couldn't see over the top of their backs. And these people were going broke. They weren't making any money on those cows. They were too big. They couldn't. Folks, 1,000 pound cow will always weigh a higher percentage of your body weight. And for every 100 pounds that you go up in weight over 1,000, you lose 2% fertility. So to go from 1,000 to 1,500, take 5 times 2, you've lost 10% of your fertility on your cow herd to rebreed. Take one through the winter. Take one through the winter that weighs 1,500 pounds. Take one through the winter that weighs 1,000 pounds. I promise you that 1,000 pound cow will be fatter at the end of the winter than that 1,500 pound cow will on forage alone. That's what we're talking about today. I'm not talking about putting silage in or grain, forage.
So the question and the reason why we love a big cow is we also, well, not so much now, but we like a big carcass. So what weight would your finished or growing animals be sold at?
1,000 to 1,100 pounds.
So,
yep.
Which is 1,000. I don't know why I keep doing it.
400 to 500.
500 kilo type animals.
Yep. Perfect size. Yep. How many housewives want to put a ribeye in the skillet that big around? In Missouri, it won't even fit in a skillet. I've got a breeder down the road. He's bragging about 20-inch ribeyes. You can't put that in a skillet.
Barbecue,
it doesn't make.
But I agree, not on a. Anyway, so
yeah.
I know
I'm challenging a lot of paradigms, but that's what you got me on here for.
No, and a lot of the challenge we have is that people are trying to adjust mature size within a breed, and actually, it becomes quite a difficult thing to do. And what people tend to move towards is a breed substitution. They basically get rid of one and bring in another. So it's, but and there are some breeds over here that are similar in weight to yourselves? Probably not quite as small, but do you mean the Ling would be one, and there's others that are coming up in terms of focusing really on those more, I suppose, smaller mature sizes? But yeah, it's the how quickly we can shift the mature size down. We know it's possible, but it's the incentive isn't here yet.
Yeah, well, the incentive in the United States with $10 bushel corn and $6 gallon diesel and $2,000 a ton for fertilizer is changing. And it's going to put a lot of cattlemen out of business, I can tell you that. Because there wasn't anybody, I would say 70% of the cattlemen in the United States are losing money with the old ways. Today, they're getting murdered. They're absolutely getting murdered. They're selling their cows because they know they can't make any money now. So, yeah, we're still in the captive share. It's not affecting us because we're not buying fertilizer, all this equipment, and our cows can go through the winter without a lot of inputs.
So just a couple more just on the cow weight. So how do you mean you said you went from 1,400 pounds to 900 pounds? Basically you just kept killing or selling the big cows? What was your strategy for doing that?
The strategy, Liz, was getting the smaller frame bulls. And I was very, very fortunate. I happened on to a South Pole bull at 5 years of age. He only weighed 1,200 to 1,300 pounds. And I kept that bull. And I kept line breeding him back to his daughters and his granddaughters and his great-granddaughters. And all I got was the perfect cow. So I've got fine, dense bones now on my cows and the bulls. I've got a big gut. You got to have a big gut on your cows to hold all the grass. And I learned to hate air under the belly of a cow. The longer legs you have on your animals, the more air you can see under the belly, the higher maintenance they are. You're not going to make any money. They can't convert the grass to bucks, to dollars. They're not built right. So you've got to stay focused on a cow that has a wide muzzle. It needs to have a wide muzzle to grab a wider mouthful of grass. Fine, dense bones. If you got a great big bone on your cow, on the leg bones, those need to go to town. You need to start focusing on a smaller, more dense bone. The denser the bone, the more tender the meat.
And we've had one question in. If you could identify one single trait, most important trait to look for in a cow, what would it be, if you can answer that?
Yeah, so in the spring, getting rid of their winter hair coat. They need to look like a mirror. They need to look like you took a wax and a rag and just waxed that whole cow down. The more shiny the cow is, Nick, the more adapted that cow is to its environment. And the cows that slick off the soonest in the spring will be the ones that breed back the earliest. You want a short calving season. You know, in nature, anything that falls out of 30 days of calving, anything that falls out of that 30-day calving window, they get eaten by a lion. Did you know that? Why?
No, you're scaring me.
Possibly not in Lincolnshire. I'm just putting it out there. There's not many lions in this bit of the world, but I get your point.
No, I'm talking about in Africa. In the wild, the large herds of wildebeest, where there's, you know, a couple million of them going across the Serengeti, the wildebeest that don't breed in the first 30 days, they get eaten by a predator. And that's because they get too fat. They get too fat. They don't stick, and then they just keep putting on weight. And the predators come in and can catch them. They can catch them because they're too fat to run. That's the way nature takes them out. So the old spindly ones that lose weight, of course, they get eaten by a predator. But the big fat ones, nature is very cruel. She kills you. She just kills you. You know, if you can't eat the forage out there on the landscape, she just kills you. And us as humans, we keep them alive. You know, we baby them and we put all this medicine in them and all this feed. And in nature, some of these animals wouldn't even be here today.
So just checking, Greg, because I'm worried about our cows' coats. When do they need to lose them by? When do they need to be silky smooth?
So to give you an example, here in Missouri, we just now hit 80 degrees, 85. With about 2 to 3 weeks of warm summer weather, that winter hair coat should be gone. And if it's not, if the winter hair coat is not gone, there's several things happening. One is you may have, of course, your animals are not getting enough energy. They're not getting enough energy through the grass plants, which means you've let your grass get overly mature. It's got too much lignin in it. The animals can't digest it properly. They're not getting enough energy. It takes energy. It takes energy in grass to make that hair slick off, and good genetics. So over time, a cow that doesn't slick off and has a lot of manure on her tail, she's probably packing parasites. And everybody around here, oh, we got to get them up. We got to pour Ivomec. You pour Ivomec down the back of them. Well, that's the dumbest thing you can do. And you pour Ivomec down the back of your cows, you just killed all the biology on your farm. Folks, a cow poops 4 times a day. That manure pat is the most valuable asset coming out of that butt. And you put all this stuff down the back of your cows to get rid of the worms, you're killing the dung beetles. You're killing the microbes, the earthworms. And now you've got all these toxic time bombs laying around your pasture with nothing to eat them. Everybody in America, they drag their pastures in the spring. Oh, let's get a big harrow and drag the pastures. You don't need to do that. Not if you got good soil biology. The earthworms just eat up the manure pads. They're gone. We make life complicated. I really believe that.
Yeah. And just back to you. So you mating period. So how long do you keep the bulls in for? So you might have said that, but just in terms of just you're trying to get.
The bulls go in July 1st. They don't come out till March 1st.
But the ambition is that
I'm not going to winter, folks. I'm not going to winter 2 groups of cows. I'm not doing it. No way. You cannot have 2 herds of animals in the wintertime. You cannot do that. You will run out of winter stockpile. Keep them together. Keep them together.
Just
people
a question.
Say, oh, go ahead.
It was it was a question was about, because of the bulls being in for such a long time, do you have any issues with caught heifer calves?
Nope, we don't wean the heifers. If you don't take the heifer calf away from the cow and wean it, she's not as likely to come in heat. You take that heifer calf off at 7 months, wean it for 6 weeks, throw it back in the mob, it's going to come into heat. And now you've got a heifer bred at 8 months. Don't break the mother-daughter relationship.
So Greg, we talked a bit about this just before we came on air. Can you just, because it's quite an interesting thing, not weaning, and you did go through. It wasn't super straightforward, was it? There were some cows that wouldn't wean their calves. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So in the early days, let me tell you why we were focusing on not weaning calves. It's not the fact that we're lazy and we just don't want to do it. Here's the deal, folks. When you wean a calf in the fall, everybody weans their calves in September, October from a spring-born calf. So the calf is 7 months old. When you take that baby calf, it's not a baby, it's a 7-month-old calf. You take that calf away from the mom. What are you going to do with it? You want to keep it. You don't want to sell it. We don't sell any of our calves until they're 2 years of age. We want those genetics. We've got super genetics. We want to finish that calf on grass. So if you wean the calf, that cow all of a sudden is doing nothing. You're still paying for her. If you borrowed the money, you're still paying for her. You're paying the interest on her. What are you doing? Giving her a vacation all winter long? Oh, but Greg, she's raising a calf inside her. A good cow should have a big fat tail. A big fat wrinkles of tail fat on that tail. And we call that wintering the calf on the fat of the tail head. So as the calf goes through the winter, it's just getting a little bit of milk. But you know what? That calf will get pig fat. it'll eat that winter stockpile. And in the springtime, man, they just take off. They just take off. If you wean them in the fall, you're going to have to feed that calf a supplement. Otherwise, that calf's not going to do well. He's going to get thin, and he might even die. And so that's why we don't wean. We make the cow take the calf through the winter on the fat of her tail, on the fat of her back. And so let me go on with that. A cow that is a really heavy milker, a cow that has been bred to put out a lot of milk. Folks, we're not in the dairy business. We're in the beef cattle business. A beef cow should only put out a certain amount of milk. Don't sacrifice her body for the calf. So if you have a really heavy milk cow that's putting out a lot of milk, it's going to show up by March. That cow's going to be thin. Sell her. She's a freak of nature. She's putting out too much milk. High milking cows in the beef business, they're going to lose you money because you got to supplement them. They're not going to breed back. They're not going to breed back. They're going to be too thin when they calve.
We've got a range of questions on stocking rate. Really, there's a few on terms of how do you measure stocking rate? Is it pounds per acre, or how do you generally report that?
Yeah, so on stocking rate, it's animal units. So for instance, if you weighs 140 pounds, you divide that by 1,000 pounds, that tells you how many ewes you can run for one animal unit. Right now, we're running about altogether, when we get done calving, we're going to be at about 450 beef animals on our farm. We've got 17 farms at 1,700 acres, but about 1,700 acres, there's only about 750 to 800 of it that's grass. The rest is all timber and brush. So we're stocked at about 2 acres per animal unit. That's what our stocking rate is.
Okay. And you said it was, cold in the winter, hot in the summer. So what would your grass growing period be? How long would you grow grass for?
Yeah, so we can start growing grass by April 1st, and we can grow grass until the end of October. Okay. So our dormant season is November, December, January, February, March, 5 months. Yeah. And
do you do I suppose this is pounds produced per hectare or acre. How do you do at the sort of the end of year, how many kilos of growth that you've produced? Would you do that calculation, or how do you do the change over season, I suppose, on weight?
Yeah, so what we're watching for the whole time, Liz, is our recovery periods, how much rainfall we're getting. And if we don't receive rainfall, if our grasses are not growing back, you've got to lengthen that recovery period. So in the springtime, for example, we'll go around all of our farms in a period of about 25 days. By June, we've bumped that up to probably 45 days. July and August, we might be at 90 to 100 days. It depends on the rainfall. So we're watching our regrowth. That's what we're watching. We're monitoring the grass. And if we don't get rain, we sell off some animals. You've got to sell animals off. And the sooner you do that, the less animals you have to sell. If you procrastinate and pray for rain and it doesn't rain, you may end up having to sell half your herd because you waited too long, and now you're going to get a lower price.
And how do you plan that in terms of is it through experience, or do you use a planner or a bit of paper, or how do you sort of almost days ahead type calculation?
Yeah, so we just use a grazing planner calendar. We have in the past used the holistic grazing charts. And last year, we used one. I'll let the interns fill one of those out. The fact that we move the animals twice a day, it gets a little bit clogged, that chart does. You just don't have enough room for all the moves. And we have 17 farms. It makes it a little bit challenging, but the grazing planner works pretty good for us. And I'm constantly going back and looking at where we started our first rotation at. Sometimes the grass will get away from us. and it just goes to seed head, because the sole purpose of a plant, the only thing that plant's concerned about is reproducing. And once it puts the seed head on, that plant is done for that year. And that's when you start not getting quite as many leaves to come out. So as a grazer, our job is to try and keep the seed head from forming so we get more and more leaf production and the plants stay more palatable.
And there's a question, so we mentioned tall fescue. What else is in those pastures? Is it dominated by tall fescue, or there's clovers and other things as well?
Oh yeah, we have probably 60% is fescue, 25 to 30% is clover, red clover, white clover. Then we have another one called Korean Lespedeza, which is a warm season legume. And then we have Japanese clover. We have orchard grass, which I think you all may call that cocksfoot.
Yeah.
Is that what you call it? Yeah. We have orchard grass. We have Timothy, bluegrass, brome. And then we have the warm season grasses. We have eastern gammon grass, big blue stem, Indian grass. Those are all grasses that start growing in, summer. When the cool season grasses slow down, these warm season grasses will kick in. And that'll help you a lot.
And there was, sorry, Nick, I've done a bit of question bombardment.
No, go on. I think there's one other question, isn't there?
Yeah, just James, in terms of, and you mentioned those 17 farms. Do they face do they join one another, or how do you move stock between areas? The question is about moving stock over distance.
Yeah, so we don't haul our livestock. We walk them. We have 13 farms that are now fastened together, all in one big long line. These are all, we own one of them. All the rest of them are leased farms. But the other 4 farms are way down the road. Well, I say a mile. We walk the mob of cattle down the gravel road. We do live in a rural area, and we are full-time farmers, ranchers, so we can do it at 10 o'clock in the morning. 99% of the people out where we live, they work in town. And so they're not even home. We just open the gate and we walk the animals. And when you can walk 400 animals to the next farm without using a truck and $6 a gallon diesel fuel, that's a good thing. They like walking. They enjoy it. They enjoy the walk. Yeah.
And I'm guessing, and so I know Pat in Netpill, at Nep, they've been using some of the sort of techniques from the American ranching systems in terms of moving cattle and learning how to move cattle. So yeah, those sort of techniques could be useful as well.
Yeah. When you move your animals every day or twice a day or every 2 days, they get used to seeing you and they're happy. They know they're going to green grass, and you open that gate, they'll do the rest of the work for you. They'll just go, and you just need to direct them where you want them to go, and they will do that for you.
Greg, can I just ask you about the kind of regenerative movement in the States? And this is a blunt question, but are you considered an oddball by your neighbours?
Yes, we are. I love it. I love it, Nick. I like it. I like it. I mean, I like when the neighbors they stop and their eyes are sticking out of their head, and they're wondering why we're moving this little piano wire out there in the snow while they've got a big bale on their tractor. And we just fed 400 bales. We just fed 400 cows on an ATV, and we're back to the house before their tractor even gets warmed up. Folks, that's called power. That's called being smart. And with fuel prices going where they're headed, I mean, you all are under the 8 ball too. Your fuel is a lot higher than ours is. I'm just shocked that ours is $6 a gallon. You all have had high fuel a lot longer than we have. I don't think it's going to go back down for a while. We've got to change. we've got to change. And if we aren't willing to reach out and look at different ways, maybe different than what mom and dad and grandpa did, we're not going to grow. You're not going to grow. It's not going to change. You're not going to exist. You're not going to exist. You're just not going to exist. Your farm's going to be history. And the definition of insanity is to do the same thing every year and expect a different result. It's not going to happen. So yeah, I like being talked about.
Well, we like being the oddballs. But is the education, the agricultural education system in the States, is that still very conventional?
Yes. Yes. But there are some trends that are starting to change. To give you an example, the Missouri Cattlemen's Association this year, very, very strict, doing it the old-fashioned way. They called me up and asked me to be their keynote speaker this year. And I did. I went. And at first I was like, no, you all the ones been beating me up for the last 20 years. That's that oddball doing that grass-fed stuff. But I'm like, no, I couldn't have that attitude. And now, matter of fact, next Friday, they're coming out here. A group of them are. They want to see our farm now. So you've got to build bridges. Even if they're doing things different, don't push them aside. Grab them by the hand, bring them onto your farm, and show them what you're doing. But you can't make them mad. If you make them mad, they're going to go away stomping and saying, you're not going to change them. You got to explain why you're doing what you're doing, and then just let them go home and think about it. Yep.
I've got a question from Will about sheep, because we haven't really talked about anything. I don't mean that sounded critical. Yeah. We've talked a lot about beef cattle, but you've also got sheep.
I'm just...
We'll ignore her. She's a Wi-Fi's gone funny. But just briefly, in terms of, are you running sheep on a similar system to your cattle?
We are. We're running hair sheep, the St. Croix. It's a breed called St. Croix. St. Croix sires on Katahdin cross ewes. And so our sheep are raised for meat. The hair, there is no market now in the United States for wool. And so, 25% of what a sheep eats goes to grow wool that we got to pay somebody to shear off and throw it in the landfill or let it decompose. And so hair sheep have taken over the United States. I mean, every sheep sale you go to now in the Midwest, there's no wool sheep left. It's all hair sheep. And matter of fact, it's one of the hottest markets there is now in the United States. Sheep and goat sales are just through the roof. And people go, what's causing that? Well, these homesteaders that are buying 20, 30, 40 acres, instead of buying a 1,000-pound cow and running 3 or 4 cows, they can run 20 sheep. And the sheep that we run are rotated every 2 days. We've got them broke to hot wire. And so our animals are rotated just like the cows, except for every half a day, they get moved every 2 days. Our sheep do have guardian dogs with them. We have a lot of predators out here, but we've got our sheep now broke to one single hot wire. And it's working great. We don't worm, we don't vaccinate, we don't wean, we don't trim hooves, we don't shear them. We don't assist them in lambing. We don't even go, we've been in lambing season for 2 weeks now. I haven't stepped in the pasture except to roll wire up. We don't mess with them. I don't even go amongst the ewes when they're lambing, just leave them alone. Yep, that's what we do. And it's working great.
And we've got about 5 minutes left. So there's just, it was a question, Nick, as well. Just fly control, parasite control. I know they're different things. So let's question about fly control first, I suppose.
Yeah, so fly control. We do have up 450 tree swallow houses. They're birds. These tree swallows, an adult pair will eat 8,000 flies a day. Those are the flies that are sucking the blood out of your cows. Also, barn swallows. Barn swallows are another good one. They eat a lot of flies. Folks, I can't overemphasize the importance of moving animals and having slick slick-hided, oily. When you reach out and touch the back of your cow, run your hand down the top of the back of the cow. It should come back oil covered. Flies don't like landing on oily surfaces because their feet get stuck. And when the tail comes around to swat at them, they can't fly off. So the flies will always attack a cow that has a lot of dry hair on her. It's one of those cows that didn't shed off in the springtime. We call those fly magnets. They're bringing all the flies in, and that cow's sending out a smell. Kill me, kill me. That's what that cow's saying. And the flies are more than willing to do that. The oily, slick-hided cows, you're not going to see any flies on them. But by moving your cows all the time, when a fly hatches out of a cow manure pie, it only travels about 100 yards from where it was born. So by moving, you're outrunning a lot of that fly load. Keep those cows moving. Leave the fly load behind. That's what the buffalo did on the prairies for tens of thousands of years. Pooped and peed and then moved forward. We do the same thing.
And to confirm, we said earlier, which is you don't treat for any internal parasites. That's part of, it's your selection criteria is that those animals, both cattle and sheep, are resistant.
Liz, that's a great question. And why don't we do that? It's not because we're lazy. It's because we've let the cows build up genetic resistance. If every time I got a sniffle and I went and got an antibiotic, ate some antibiotic every time I got a sniffle, pretty soon it wouldn't do me any good if I got major sick. The antibiotic's not going to do me any good. It's the same way on a cow. Let them build up some resistance, okay? Don't let your animals graze the grass short. The parasites live down the bottom part of the grass. So when the cows graze too short, or the sheep, they're ingesting a lot of parasites.
So in the last 3 minutes, I know it's been a slightly shorter one than normal, but it's like this has now built my excitement up a bit too much now. I'm not sure how I'm going to cope with the next 45 days. We're still getting questions in. Nick, do you have any final things you want to ask Greg? Because we've got to let him go. He's got something else to do at 5:30.
No, I did want to ask. Oh, is my finger?
Yeah,
am I there?
fine.
Am I here?
Yeah.
I did want to ask you about the triangle of death, but we'll save that to carbon calling. There's loads I want to ask you, Greg, but I think this has just been fantastic, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you in Cumbria.
Yes,
thank you.
I'm looking forward to meeting you all as well. It'd be great.
Liz, have we got 2 minutes for these last questions or not?
Possibly. So I just so one is quickly, why is there no market for wool in the US?
Why is there no market for wool in the U.S.? The United States government removed the wool subsidy 30 years ago, and wool prices just collapsed. And, synthetic. Look at synthetic. You can buy everything synthetic today. There's just hardly any wool garments around anymore. I personally love wool. I'd rather wear wool than I would a synthetic. But, yeah, there's just nobody raising wool sheep anymore. Nobody shears. There's no shears over here. Nobody shears sheep anymore.
There's a quick fire, another one, which is, do the butchers like the carcasses of your animals?
Repeat that question.
Sorry, that was a bit too quick. Do the butchers or your processors like the carcasses? Have they been selected for carcass quality as well, or is it the grass-fed story that people particularly like at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to if you can raise an animal on forage alone without GMO corn being ingested in that animal, you have a really good market for that beef. And it's becoming more and more known that the more we feed animals grain, it does upset the biology and the pH in their gut. A ruminant has the pH of 7. The minute you put corn in there, it turns this gut acidic. And that's why we're getting E. coli.
But our butcher likes to butcher our cattle.
Yeah.
And the last one is, have you ever tried pasture cropping? So the idea of putting in C4 species into your pasture.
Yeah, we've done 1 year. one year we did cover crops where we actually drilled a 9-way species right into our fescue, and it did fairly well. But the cost of doing that was $70 an acre, and I couldn't verify that cost for what I could do without it. I mean, folks, if you keep 30% clover in there and you graze correctly, get your stocking density right, let your animals manipulate that sward of grass, you're going to get all kinds of stuff coming up in there. You don't need to be doing all this cropping stuff. Sell all that machinery. Invest your money in livestock.
Perfect. Thank you. Anything else to add, Nick? Take home message?
No, but I just can't wait now. And so, yeah, so anyone on the call, just spread the carbon calling message and buy your tickets and book in for what we call a leg stretch with Greg. No?
Stretch your leg with Greg. It's not the best work we've ever done, it has to be said, but it was the best we could do.
Yeah, and yeah, no, looking forward to it. We've got a great list of farmer speakers. A lot of them are on the call tonight, and yeah, we've got the beer booked, and it should be good. Some musical instruments.
I've already started to have panic dreams, so it's definitely close by.
But yeah, thank you all for being on the call, and yeah, big thanks to Greg.
Thank you very much, everybody. Goodbye. Yeah, the recording will be available shortly, so thank you very much. Bye for now.